When you're also one of the very few artists that got that big break, that got the recognition, the awards, you were flying out for like award shows. Did you feel like you got more opportunities after you came back, or were they treating you like, oh, she got her break, so let's just focus on the other artists now? She knows, she's like, she probably charges more. She's probably like doesn't want to perform with us. Like, did you find those kind of judgments about you?
I wanted to take this opportunity to show everyone that it is possible. School is not just about the academics. The world is not just about academics.
They spend a lot of time on social medias because they get that attention that sometimes they're not getting at home.
If that is something you are speculating, or you think there's something that needs to be addressed, don't be afraid to tell them. And I understand that's something that families don't want to hear.
Okay, Lakshmi.
Hello.
Hello. You are no stranger to our Tamil community. Obviously, everyone knows you as the girl who sang Senthoora.
Oh my God.
The Senthoora fame, Lakshmi is your name now in our community.
What an introduction.
Thank you. So, we all know how Senthoora happened and what happened with Senthoora. But what I want to know is what happened after Senthoora. Because many people have this assumption that, you know, once you get your big break into the industry, you're set. You have like bookings back to back. You're flying in and out of Chennai like it's nothing.
Yeah.
And people need to know that that isn't always the reality.
Yeah.
And it takes a certain mindset to be able to handle that and accept that. Which is why I have you on the podcast today, to help the singers who want to pursue that path too, to get that kind of understanding of what it really takes to be where you are today. So welcome to my intense podcast.
Thank you for having me.
So I want to hear the story about, okay, fine. For the people who don't know, which I highly doubt, let's talk about Senthoora for a bit.
Sure.
So you started off as a singer, and you have been performing in Toronto for many years.
And I don't think people know, my first ever exposure was Carnatic music, like formal training.
Yeah.
My parents have never studied music. They appreciate it. You know, from what I remember, like my mom says, there was music playing at home all the time. One of my favorite songs is Chikkabuku Raile. If it still goes on, like I'm having my own party. But, you know, music was always playing in our house, like whatever form, whatever genre, it was always there. And like I said, my journey started with Carnatic. And then slowly, when I was about 8, my mom, you know, had me enrolled or going to all these vocal competitions, and that's kind of how I got exposed to the cine world. Until then, like, we'd watch movies and, like, you know, I'd dance and I'd sing with all the songs that are part of these movies, but like it wasn't really a thing until those competitions came in. And my very first song was Amma Vumniye Appa Vumniye. And then from there is like, you know, P. Sushilama's songs. And then slowly I started getting more interested, and we started exploring more genres of music. And, you know, as I was kind of familiarizing myself with all these genres, and I studied music in university as well. And then I went on to do a postgrad in education. I taught music up until the pandemic, but we'll get to that in a second. You know, I was just posting my covers, and I wasn't thinking anything at the time. I was like, I really like to sing. I want to share my voice, and I used Instagram as a platform. And one day, I was actually at school, and I get a message from Imman sir's Instagram account, asking for like some vocal samples and things like that. And for a second, I was like, wait, what? Right? Because, you know, I never expected anything of that. Like, Did you think
it was a prank?
No, well, it was a verified account at the time, but again, like my mind went to that. It's like, is someone else messaging me, or is this like the actual Imman sir? But he actually asked for my contact number, and it was later like a WhatsApp phone call, so that's how I knew it was legit. But you know, before we flew down, he just asked for like vocal samples in different genres, and I sent things over to him, and I guess Senthoora was available for me.
Yeah,
but it just, the way it happened was very unexpected.
Yeah.
You know, I never thought my career would, or my music journey would kind of turn this way. And like I said, like we have all these inspirations. I sang along, I danced along, but that moment I was like, whoa, this is happening to me. Yeah.
But did you always have playback as like an option of something you wanted to pursue, or is that something you were like, it's not gonna happen? Like
I mean,
wanna
it
know
was
what that
like, as a
process
little
was like.
girl, it was a dream.
Yeah.
Always, right? Like I said, we grew up listening to like Chitra Ma,
Yeah.
Janaki Ma, Shreya Ghoshal, like all these lovely singers, and it was always at the back of my mind. And I was watching like Celine Dion or like Nelly Furtado and all these people, Britney Spears, Hilary Duff, and I was like, what if I could become like them? But that was like my little girl dreams in the back of my head. I didn't think it would happen.
And it did.
And it did, yeah.
So after Senthoora happened, it's not like there are some people that sing for the playback industry and they're kind of like, okay, this is my song, and then they go back to it. But Senthoora was like a sensation. Like it became.
So getting to that, I actually recorded the song, and like Amma was with me in the studio, and Sir said to me like, and I actually had no one knew at the time, like we just went, my immediate family knew, and we just went, but like my friends in Chennai at the time were like, don't have too many hopes, because a lot of times like the debut song doesn't make it, or sometimes the singer might change, and they were telling me all these things. So, you know, I was just so nervous. I kind of blocked everything out, and I said, Sir trusted me and invited me to sing this song, and I just, you know, I want to give it my all, and then we'll take care of what happens after that. And I sang it. I came home. I didn't know what was going to happen. And then one day I wake up and I see like the song promo, and everyone's favorite, the explosion of the colorful flowers. And I was like, oh my God, that's my voice.
Wow.
Yeah. But again, like I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know I was going to get other offers. You know, the industry was so new. I didn't have too many people to kind of guide me. And like I said, my parents are so supportive in a way where they said, explore what you want to explore, but we don't know how to help you.
Right.
And, you know, I don't have family in Chennai. We're all here. My friends are there, but like at the time I was also still in school. So, you know, I left everything and said, whatever happens, happens. And I came back home to Toronto, and apparently I was being looked for. It's like, who is this girl who sang this song and just disappeared? Like they had a name, but they didn't have a face to kind of go with it. So a lot of opportunities were missed then. I'm not going to say I don't regret that, but that, you know, life happens. But I came back here, finished my studies, ended up getting a job in teaching. And then I used the summer as a time to go back to India and kind of reconnect and do whatever I can musically. And at the same time, like we're performing here and working with like the artists here. So, yeah.
That's the thing I hear about many artists who live abroad from Chennai, where they say, I wish I could be there more, so they know I'm more available for opportunities
because
like this, right?
It's difficult, right? Like the going back and forth, it's kind of not ideal. And if you have the relationships where they can trust you and they send you project files or things like that, you record it and you work remotely, that's great. I have done some work like that too, but it's not the same as like being there in the studio. The composer might be there, the lyricist might be there, director, like the team will be there, and that's a very different experience than you working here alone. So,
and after all the gigs you do here, having something like that where you get to be in the same room as them is something you probably want to as an artist, right?
I mean, it can get a little intimidating because there's a lot of pressure, but of course, like it's a different experience on its own. Yeah.
But being someone from Toronto, when you're in Chennai, do you ever feel like a sense of like, do I really belong here? Or is it like, have you ever felt that? Or are you like lucky enough to have like the gang who keeps you?
Oh no,
you know?
I go there and I feel like I'm at home.
Okay, that's very good.
I would, if I could, I would just be like, bye.
Yep.
You know.
Yes.
It's a different feel of its own. And, you know, life here is very go, go, go. And I do appreciate all my opportunities and I love everything that I'm doing here. A big part of that move also is that my family is here.
Of course.
And I'm very connected to my family.
Yeah.
And you know, we're born and raised here. It takes some time. No matter how homely it feels or how much I love it, taking the time to adapt and, you know, leaving life here to go restart somewhere else, it has its own pressures and everything. So,
one thing I do, so from the story you've said so far, obviously it seems like, you know, everything's going great and like everything's nice and life is just wonderful, but which is I'm happy to hear. But at the same time, when you're also one of the very few artists that got that big break, that got the recognition, the awards, you were flying out for like award shows and stuff like that.
I was, like one day I'd be here and then the next week I'd be somewhere else, or we'd be performing for concerts, and you know, it was apart from work here, I was like always on the go. That doesn't mean there isn't like a downside to that,
which is what I wanted to get into. Because what did you see, like from the way people reacted when you came back, whether it's different, like the singers here or even like, you know, just the community, did you feel like you got more opportunities after you came back, or were they treating you like, oh, she got her break, so let's just focus on the other artists now? She knows, she's like, she probably charges more, she's probably like doesn't want to perform with us. Like, did you find those kind of judgments about you?
When I came back, I have to say though, for the most part, like everyone was just so supportive and they were so proud because I was like that first female singer who went and sang for a mainstream movie. Like, whoever thinks they're gonna sing for JM Ravi in song number 1, like I didn't even know those details, right? You know, and
so when you were performing, you didn't know what movie this was?
I didn't know anything. I didn't know anything.
Wow, okay.
Until after I met Imman sir and I recorded it and then he gave me some details, like I had no idea. Okay. And that's often the case. But yeah, you know, it was a moment of pride and like everything. And for me, it was a warming experience to see how happy my parents were because, you know, they, as an immigrant family, they came here and they had so many sacrifices. They worked so hard and they gave me the liberty to do what I wanted to do. And that moment of like all the sacrifices, all their hard work, you know, them taking me to my lessons and all of this, and we missed like family events and things like that. Like that moment when the song came out was huge for them and the rest of my family and my friends. And there were so many people here who were, you know, giving me all these recognitions and calling me to do all these performances or flying me out all over the world to kind of, you know, share my voice and have me perform. But at the same time, there were stories going around too of like, you know, the narrative was made for me about how I received that opportunity or things like that, which, I mean, they took the time to talk about me. Right? Like, you know what I mean, right? Like when you work so hard and something just comes to you, that part's a little discouraging, I would say, because, you know, I wanted to take this opportunity to show everyone that it is possible. You know, it's not wrong to have dreams. It's not wrong to work towards that. And things might just happen one day.
That I feel like you said that in a very nice way, because it's like, I know you're trying to be very respectful to the people, even though they might have put you in a position that wasn't very, you know, favorable, to say the least. But I do also want to get into this now. So you did sing for A.R. Rahman, the GOAT. You were part of a song for his, like you performed with for a movie. I mean, you sang for a movie. Yeah, it was a Telugu song, from what I remember.
So I sang in Telugu for Imman sir. For Tick 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 is like the first space movie. So that was one, but I got to sing in Malayalam for Rahman sir. And that was for the film Cobra. Which, like, I just happened to be in Chennai that year. I think that was the first time I went back post-COVID, like COVID took a lot of those traveling opportunities away with us, especially when I was regularly going back to Chennai, after the school year kind of wrapped up. So again, like that call came to me from the studio because I think at the time he had like a North American tour, so he wasn't even there. But again, it just happened. I didn't think it was going to happen. And it was challenging because Malayalam's not easy. No. I was like, oh boy. Yeah, but they were very supportive. Like the sound engineers and the team that was there was very helpful with teaching me the words and, being very patient with me. And once I got the grasp of it, like it just went. Yeah.
So you didn't actually get to see him in studio?
I didn't, no.
That's one of the reasons I wanted to ask you this because, obviously when people think about you getting an opportunity from someone in playback or like in the industry in Chennai, they think that it's the music director who's messaging you saying, hey, come to my studio.
Like I've had, even when I was there singing for other music directors, it's oftentimes like an assistant or someone else who's part of the team who reaches out to you. So that's why for Senthoora, it was so different because Imman sir directly reached out. And I think for a first experience, that was kind of nice because I didn't know what to expect. Like you said, like it could have just been anyone. Yeah.
What I would like to know is, like, I'm asking this question from the perspective of singers who want to have what you were able to get, like that, those type of opportunities. You see a lot of singers now trying their best to like put out content on a regular basis. When a song comes out, if they know it's viral, they do their own version with the hopes that someone will recognize them, right? But I don't think that's how it happened for you, where it's like, yes, you were doing music, you were posting your content, but you had a life outside of it. But these opportunities still came to you. Yeah. So to take off that pressure from singers, what kind of advice could you give from the kind of the path they need to take in order to kind of...
I think it's really important to just like continue working on our craft and working on ourselves because music has evolved tremendously. And I think you would agree, like from what we grew up with to where we're at now, the sounds have changed, the expectations of like our listeners has changed. There's a lot of different components. It's not just the song. It's like whether it's the lyrics or if there's a video and like the rest of the team, there's just so many different aspects that come into play. And I think it's really important to, like I said, continue working on yourself, continue working on your craft, spend time on that. And of course, it's always good to make use of social media because it's such a great platform and keep putting out your content. But, don't just wait for that to happen because I think there's a lot of discouragement that might come with that if that's the one thing you are hoping for. Yeah. Because we know social media is, like I said, it's a great platform, but it's saturated.
So we know Luksimi as the singer, but I do want to transition into Luksimi as the teacher now, who teaches for the York Region, York District.
York Region District.
York Region District. Sorry, guys. But one thing I want to kind of mention about teachers is how much I find teachers fascinating because you always remember that one teacher who complimented you when you were little to pursue your dreams or the teacher that said, no, you're not good enough for this. Those are the things that stay in your mind.
Which is like a really good point to come to because the kids don't always remember, the curriculum or like the academic side of it, which I mean, that's naturally part of our job, but they do remember the small things or like those moments, the memories that you kind of created with them. Yeah. Like I have all these kids coming back to me from a couple of years ago, with all these memories, or do you remember when this happened, or do you remember when that happened? And it's like,
oh. But I do have to appreciate you for choosing that career because it's not easy. I feel like people don't recognize teachers for what they're actually doing because you're not just doing a job. Teaching is not just a job. You guys are mentors. You kind of shape how these students think to an extent too, right? So
and I want to know what was that. So many hours of the day with us. You, and like you said, we are essentially like another figure, a role model,
Yeah.
and our actions or the way we speak or our words really mold them into who they are or leave that impact. And yeah, it's way beyond just delivering curriculum.
Right.
You have to connect with them and understand who they are. And, you know, pandemic has really changed the course of or how education or what education is right now. Yeah.
But I want to know before we, because I do have questions about the pandemic, because that was a whole interesting phase you went through.
I
as
don't even
teachers.
know. Like, I look back at it and I'm like, how did I get through? Or like, how did we as a whole, like, even get through that, right? Because some of our current challenges seem like a bigger struggle than like what we went through. Like, okay.
I know.
Yeah.
But so before we get into that, let me ask you this. What was your reason for choosing teaching? Because I find it that fascinating, because I feel like most of the artists end up choosing like a 9-to-5 desk job just so it gives them that opportunity to focus more on their arts. But teaching isn't something you can do that with. When you're teaching, you're fully involved in teaching.
Yeah.
So what was your like little why in the mind for choosing teaching as your career?
I think naturally I really like to help people or like learn with people, share my knowledge. Like that's just something I love to do. But it was my elementary school music teacher who kind of, I don't know, like she played a big role in a lot for me. She was so encouraging. She was always interested to hear about all of the extracurriculars I was doing outside of school, whether it was playing an instrument, whether it's dance, whether it's singing. And she always gave me that space in the classroom to kind of just share who I was, which is difficult because I feel like we go through a little bit of an identity crisis too, right? It's like, you know, at home you're doing this, at school I'm doing this, or with all the different music genres as well. She was just so warm and welcoming and accepting of all of that. And I kind of wanted to just be her. Yeah. And I went in thinking, that's it. I'm going to be a music teacher. This is the deal. I'm never going to change, or I'm never going to become a homeroom teacher and have my own class. Like, I want to do music. And that quickly shifted. Right? But like, I also like to take on a challenge, and I want to keep growing. Like, you know, I'm always taking other courses to just continue enhancing my knowledge, or like strategies on how to meet the kids where they are and further enhance the learning experience. So after the pandemic, I kind of took a break from music ed, and I'm like a homeroom teacher now. So I've been teaching like intermediate, grade 6, 7. Next year I'm going to be teaching grade 2, which is a change. Yeah. No, people are like, what are you doing to yourself? I'm like, I want to experience it all before I kind of settle down in one thing. 'Cause every day is a new day. And grade 6 and 7 is that age where they're like, they absorb things really quickly, and that molds them into who they are, right? Yeah. So what is that like? Like, what is it like to be that person that, like, you know, these students look up to? Yeah, I go into all these schools without saying who I am outside of school, because I don't want to take away from anyone's experience. I don't want to be the star or the one, because my very first teaching job in a private school, there's a large South Asian community, and like even outside in the parking lot, like this was right after Senthoora happened. It's like, what are you doing here? Oh wow! I was like, I teach here. Yeah. So after that, I went in saying, I'm not going to say anything. I just want to be like everyone else and be that teacher who shares experiences as it comes up, or just have a fun time with my kids. But you know, the older ones find you on social media. Or we still have like I do have quite a few like Tamil kids in the classroom or in other classes who are like, what are you doing here? Yeah, it's like, I saw you over the weekend, or I found your Instagram page, or you sang Senthoora. I was like, oh, great, here we go, right? I told you have the Senthoora on your forehead for the rest of your life. And I remember the school that I'm currently at, like when I first went to that school, a couple of girls came together and were like, can we take a photo or can we have your autograph? And I was like, wait, I didn't say anything. Like, what is happening here? Right? And I don't even say anything about my extracurriculars to my colleagues.
Okay.
But, you know, Instagram does its thing and they find it or I end up sharing with my closest colleagues and word spreads, or the kids do an excellent job of telling everyone what Miss Siva did over the weekend, which is nice because in a way they get to see me in another light and it's so nice for me to see that, you know, I can inspire them in a different way, not just as their teacher. And they have a lot of questions to ask, and it's another way for me to kind of expose them to the real world or the realities of a lot of different things, because, you know, you're not just an influencer. You didn't become famous overnight. There's a lot of work that goes behind all of that. So yeah.
But I was going to say exactly what you said, where it's like now these kids look up to you as an inspiration to know that they can pursue like the arts alongside another career. And like those are the type of things that they're seeing from you. Right?
Yeah. I had a parent come to me to thank me for kind of fostering or bringing out that, like, the passion that one of my kids had for music, because she didn't really know that was something that she liked. She was very much into the arts. She loved reading. She loved writing, but music just became another thing that she was really interested in. And her mom was so grateful that, you know, I kind of exposed her to that. And, you know, we talked about the different routes or different, like, paths, even educationally, that she could take if the arts is something that she's you know, passionate about. So yeah,
that's really nice to hear. So most parents who come to you, yes, they're probably saying, like, you know, it's great that you're inspiring my kids, but has the opposite happened where they're like, you're kind of like, seeing you is making my kid focus more on the arts and I want them to focus on academics more?
Not really, because I think
have we actually changed?
No. Not there. I think they really appreciate that I can bring in another side of me, because, you know, school is not just about the academics. The world is not just about academics. There's so many different career paths. Employers are looking for that unique factor, or like what makes you special. Yeah. And it's nice to just be like a whole or well-rounded person when the kids see you in that light. And I always tell them that, you know, it's not always about the books. Think about being a well-rounded person. And, you know, those life skills, those learning skills that we might have missed out of during the pandemic, unfortunately. Like, it's the bigger picture that we need to look at. So I think they're just very grateful.
That's really good. So I feel like you do see this shift in the generation of parents now too, where it's like they're accepting of letting their kids pursue the arts, whereas like with us it was more like academics first, arts is second always. Right?
And I mean, society has changed, the needs have changed, and there's so much more to explore, and I'm actually so grateful to see that shift, that we're openly accepting a lot of different jobs or a lot of different career paths now, which is great to see. Yeah.
Since we mentioned the pandemic, I'm going to go back to that. I know that was a very like a dark phase that the education system went through. And
I mean, not just education. I think for my... education, but even as an artist, I think I came to a point where I was like, what do I do with myself now? Because overnight or all of a sudden they're like, we're going to switch to virtual teaching, and we had such a limited amount of time to just switch, right? And once they announced that, we didn't even know what that would look like, what that would entail of, like, what is our job, what do we do? So I was like, oh my god, like, this teacher side of me, what am I gonna do? Like, I instantly just started to panic, like a lot of my colleagues. But the music side as well, I was like, I can't perform, I can't travel, like, what do I do now? So like you said, it was a dark phase for everyone. where we had to like slowly just learn and adapt
Right.
over time. Yeah.
No, but even like with virtual training, it's not like when you got this job as a teacher, you had that training on the side. This is something you learn after the pandemic started.
And I
right?
think we're lucky as younger teachers because we're more familiar with the different platforms and how to
Technology,
use
too.
technology,
Yeah.
whereas it might have been a struggle for some of my other colleagues, right? So that was definitely a big piece of it. It's like, what do we do now?
And it's nice to hear a teacher's perspective of it, because obviously we've heard a lot about the parents talking about it. They got frustrated with having their kids at home and online classes and stuff. And at some points you've also heard parents getting frustrated with their teachers because they're like, what are you guys doing? Like, how are we supposed to learn?
Because I mean, we have to think about how to deliver this curriculum now in an effective way, but an engaging way. Because once you're sitting in front of a computer, like it's not like we're having that face-to-face conversation. There's so many other parts that can distract the child, or, you know, technology has its limits in terms of like access and like the whole equity, equality piece of that too, right? We had kids who probably didn't have the best Wi-Fi connection or the technology, even though that was being distributed. So there's so many different factors that came into play. It was a challenging time.
I know. And for me, I think I felt really bad for like students who had to like, especially younger children who had to switch between like the online classes and then like trying to pay attention. But then it's like when you spend too much screen time, they're getting yelled at for that too.
And like, we can't blame the kids either, because again, home is a very different setting for everyone. We don't know what that's like. Like mom and dad were probably working from home at the same time, had meetings going on. The siblings would also be there. Like I remember when I had my class, I'd hear siblings and their teachers like over in the background having a meet as well. So just everything, it's not the ideal setting, but I guess at the time when the entire world was on a lockdown, like it had to be done.
What impact do you see in the students now that they're back in classrooms? Like, do you see a difference in the way their like learning behaviors have changed? Like, do you see a big difference?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of gaps that we're trying to fill. And at the same time, something that my colleagues and I talk about is, for how long are we going to blame the pandemic? And I do get it. Like the kids that I just had recently, or who we were teaching in the junior intermediate grades, they were probably grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, where you're really building that foundation of, you know, communication, responsibility, like all those learning skills. Like
social interaction
those social skills. And then you look at the mental health and the well-being piece. And so they come back and there's the gaps to fill, but then there's the whole social emotional well-being of the child, and then their mental health, and it's like, which do I address right now, right? And sometimes, although the academics are important, you know, we find our ways to kind of deliver that in a way that resonates with the kids now, because it's not the traditional teaching style like before. Like, we know there's so many different needs now. Everyone learns differently. Everyone's strengths and areas of growth are so different. So being able to cater to that is one piece. But again, attending to the child and their mental health, their like social well-being, that's also very important. Because if we kind of neglect that, then that's going to impact them the further that they move on, right? So a lot of different pieces.
I know. So I know there are a lot of parents who listen to this podcast too, and they love asking questions about, like, you know, what they can do for their children to improve their lives. So as a teacher, what would you say can parents do at home, like in terms of, like, let's say they're sitting with their kids doing their homework? What, like, in terms of what has changed over the few years post-pandemic, what are some steps that the parents can take to help their children better if they're not able to understand, like, how to help a kid, like, with their homework or something?
I mean, the plus side is that there's so many different online resources now that the kids can, or even families can access. And I think that was the one great thing that came out of it, because you never know when that situation is going to come up again. So everything's online. But, you know, I think having that routine is a big part of it, because that lack of routine also causes some chaos, right? But I think we need to come to terms with where we are and understand that everyone's so different and unique in their own ways, and we can't really compare. Some kids take more times than others, and we're all at a different stage right now. So the academic part is there, but also understanding and fostering the other side, not just the academics, right? And, you know, supporting the extracurriculars, which is great, making sure that they're not just sitting in front of a screen all day long and you know, with sitting in front of a screen unattended or unsupervised, there's
a big difference.
A whole other world that of trouble if we don't know how we're using it. So that as well. But I think really taking the time to kind of understand what they're doing, where they are getting to know your child and giving them those different experiences, that's really important too. Yeah.
I can't even imagine like the amount of psychological changes that these kids have to adapt to in such a short frame of time. But along with these kids, it's also their parents that have to mold their schedules and their timelines.
And I think that's the challenge because of, you know, all the changes and all the demands and everyone's financial situations or with how the job market's going,
which also got impacted.
Definitely. And some families might not have all that time to spend with their child, right? So that's where a lot of kids just become really independent, or they're kind of taking care of themselves. But again, I don't blame them because everyone's situation is so different. But I think what's so important is being able to spend that time with your family to get to know what everyone is doing or what the situation is. That's so important. Yeah.
Okay, speaking of psychological impact that can have on children, all these changes can have on children, I do need to talk about social media, because I think as a teacher, what you see is like a one-on-one basis of how much social media impacts children's behavior. Do you see that, like, especially because it's great? I'm sure most of them are going to watch this episode and be like, teacher, hi. So I'm sure they're going to watch this, but even regardless, I do want to know, like, do you see the impact of social media directly on children?
Oh, and my kids who are watching, are probably going to be like, she needs to stop talking about it. But, you know, like, we've seen the worst of it. Or I guess from my music side of it, like, from different perspectives, I've seen the best and the worst, or we hear so many things as well, or being in the school, we're dealing with a lot of different things. And the biggest thing that I tell them is, you know, their safety is so important. Think about what they're posting, who they're talking to, what platform they're on, especially lovely Discord. They love to come to me, like, I don't know, they just come to me like they're talking to a friend, like, we have a Discord server called this. And like, okay. But and those kind of things worry me, because those are the things that, you know, the family might not know. And if it's not used appropriately, then we're in a little bit of trouble. But I think the other part of it, like I mentioned, is some of them are very quick to judge, or very quick to think that being an influencer or being a content creator or what have you is a very easy and fast job. And that's what was, you know, that was the trending thing during the pandemic, and it's still trending now. Or I want to be like Mr. Beast, or I want to post videos like you. And I've had quite a few of them ask me those questions as well. And I think that's the other side that I can bring to the table, or have brought to the table, of explaining what that life is like, because it's not easy, and you're not just sitting there, you know, making money off of it, or you don't just become famous overnight. That's not how that works, right? And if you ask any content creators, there's a lot of planning that goes behind that. There are challenges behind that, or getting those brand deals and making that content, planning that. There's a lot of work that goes behind that, and that's the side that they need to understand. It was quite shocking at the beginning when, you know, we have those conversations of what do you think you want to become down the road, and they're all like, I want to create YouTube videos, or I want to become a content creator. And when 30 of them tell you they want to become an influencer, it's like, oh boy.
It's like, what am I going? What am I doing? As a teacher,
and unfortunately, they think that's the fastest way to make money, and that's not necessarily the case. Or some of them openly tell me, I don't think I want to go through this many years of school because it's hard.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that's the other downside, like that resilience or that want to, I wouldn't say want to learn, but that want to just keep going despite the challenges, and having that growth mindset is not always there post-pandemic. Yeah, those are the struggles.
And also as a teacher, you probably hear some of the stories that they're not sharing with their parents because parents don't always understand these
and
sides
for them it's like, whoa, Miss Siva's young, she looks like she's cool, I'm just gonna go tell her everything. But once, and I'm not saying this because, oh no, they're in trouble now, but genuinely I worry about those things sometimes. Or amongst my colleagues and I, like, we chat and say, oh boy, like, what do we do with this now, right?
And one of the reasons that I've seen that they spend a lot of time on social media is because they get that attention that sometimes they're not getting at home. Yeah. Right? And in those circumstances, again, I'm not blaming parents because, you know, they're probably busy working many jobs or anything, like, you know, so that source of attention is coming from their screen, which they're getting so easily. So they think, okay, this is the best path to go.
Which is, again, why I think that routine element is so important. Like, I'm not saying no tech or no social media or anything like that, but
it's unavoidable.
Exactly. Like, especially the world that we're in now, it's everywhere. But be very careful and mindful with what they're exposed to, because they're so young and very vulnerable and influenced so quickly.
And another thing also that reminded me of is, speaking of like the attention that these students get, even when it comes to classrooms now, like the classrooms that you manage are huge. It's like 30 plus kids in one classroom.
I've had 32, 33, but it's not always the case. It is for for quite a few of us. We have had that. That's the case in some schools. Yeah.
Because one thing I've heard is these are like stories that I've heard from parents where it's like, because teachers are not able to manage individual kids because of such a huge, you know, capacity. Sometimes when you notice like one outlier of a kid behaving a certain way, they're quick to judge them. And again, I'm not saying this against teachers, but they're quick to judge them, to be like, maybe this kid has special needs, and they kind of isolate them, right? And that's really that can impact that kid really badly.
I think we're a little more careful, or there's a lot that goes behind that, right? Like, you're very observant, that open communication with the parents at all times. I think that's so important. Like, if that is something you are speculating, or you think there's something that needs to be addressed, don't be afraid to tell them. And I understand that's something that families don't want to hear.
Of course.
But again, like, we have such amazing educators that we work with, and, you know, trying to figure out a plan or how to help that child. And it might not even be a special need. It just might be that, you know, they learn in a different way, or some of their strengths are different, some of their areas of need are different. So how do we address that to kind of get them to where they need to be? And like you said, sometimes the class numbers are so high, there's so much happening, so there is that room for, I'm just going to fool around and do my own thing here because she doesn't know what's happening because she's doing something else, right? So that part is challenging because they're so young. You just need to be on them at all times.
Okay, I feel like this conversation is going very seriously now, that I need to like be like, okay, let's switch it to a lighter note.
But if they're listening, I love them. They know that.
I'm sure they do. But since we are talking about both your careers in the arts and teaching, one thing I want to know is, like, being in that space where it's like both the careers that you've chosen are like where you constantly have the attention of people. You're trying to keep up, like, you have systems in school to keep up with. When it comes to the arts, you're kind of trying to keep up with the standards that you need to meet. So what is it like to like deal with a day when you feel burnt out, where you're like, I'm just completely like blank today? Like in terms of teaching, how do you handle it? And in terms of art, how do you handle it? Or is it the same for both?
I think in general, those burnout days or the days where you're completely exhausted I just need to take some time to be on my own and and some days it's like complete silence, right? Like I love listening to music, but it was a day when you get in the car and you don't even turn the radio on. There's no sound at all. And for me growing up, life was always so busy. Like I come home from school, I probably have a snack or a little bit of a downtime, and it's time to go to this class or that class, or I had like a performance or a practice or something. So life has always been go, go, go. So naturally, if I had to take some time for myself and just relax, my system or my brain's just like, what are you doing? Like something's wrong. You're not supposed to sit there and not do anything. That's not who you are. But then the pandemic came and more of that burnout feel, or I'm just exhausted with everything that's happening everywhere. I think I need that me time. I need to isolate, which some people like to think she has head weight or she doesn't like to talk to people, which is unfortunate because I'm not like that. Sometimes you just want to protect your energy or just keep to yourself, keep your calm, and that's all it is, right?
And it's hard being an introvert trying to fit into that world
because like
too,
you
right?
said, both jobs are so you're always on, right? And people are always watching you, always observing you, and even on the toughest of days, you still have to be on, right?
For both, that's true. And you can have a bad day, but when you go on stage to perform,
I'm not gonna get up there and be like, sorry guys, I'm having a bad day. So if it sounds bad, then sorry, I can't. And when I see these kids who, like you said, we're inspiring them, we are their role models, or their parents are trusting us for so many hours of the day, I can't take that out on them, right? So taking that time for myself when everything is done is so important.
Well, I have to say, thank you for taking the time to be here today.
No, thank you for having me.
Because I know, like, the way your schedule is, it's like finding some time to have this conversation is like, it was really nice. And I'm grateful that you were able to make time, because I feel like everyone who sees you on Instagram or like social media in general or on stage performing, we don't get to know the personal side of what really goes through it. And not many people probably knew you're a teacher.
And like I said, I think part of it is they're so supportive, or they've seen us grow up from a young age. They're very quick to just give us a narrative of what they think is happening, or what they think is, or who they think is Luksimi based on what they know or what they see online. And
this is the real Luksimi. No, it's good. It's good to see that. And I'm really happy we got to have this conversation, because now people, I think even when they approach you, after listening to the podcast, they'll have a very different way of approaching you to know, be like, she's probably just like, a very introverted, shy girl, so I can still have a conversation with her.
If I click, or if that energy is, like, if I feel like we're vibing, I'm a total different person, and I can be that clown of a person. But if I
should ask your students that. That I want to hear in the comments.
Or come see students backstage what happens, right? But I do think it's important to kind of, I not keep to myself, but I do want to protect my energy and protect myself as well, based on prior experiences or things like that. So that's not me shutting myself away or saying I don't want to talk to you, or who are you kind of thing. That's never my mindset. It's just I need to take care of myself.
Well, thank you again for being here.
Thank
I
you.
really enjoyed this conversation. And this is a whole other side of you. So I'm really glad we got to see that side of you.
Thanks for giving me the opportunity to share that, because I think that's so important. So,
Thank you. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe on YouTube and follow on Spotify. Till next time.